911 responders. What is a call that you will never forget? My first cardiac arrest call. An old lady had woken up to her husband not breathing. He'd passed at some point during the night it seems. But all I was given at the start of the call was that he wasn't breathing. So I launched into CPR instructions. They lived out of town. So it took the ambulance crew about 25 minutes to get out to them. There was nothing crazy about the call and I've dealt with way more traumatic calls in the 2 years since. But at some point during the call, she realized he was gone, and you could hear it in her voice. That shift in tone is what sticks with me. Man called to report a male was breaking into his neighbor's vehicle across the street. A few minutes into the call the man came and started to break into the caller's vehicle. A few minutes later the man spotted my caller and broke into his house from the window. Spent 10 minutes listening to physical fight when I finally heard the police enter the house and say there's blood everywhere. Both intruder and caller died. Oh. And another 911 dispatcher had my caller's wife and kids on another line who were hiding upstairs and heard everything. I talked a lot of people who were shot / stabbed / beaten in the final moments of their lives, but you usually get them after the situation occurred. This caller was just trying to look out for his neighbor, and I spent a good 15 to 20 minutes bantering while waiting for officers to arrive and get the auto thief. Getting to joke around and get to know someone's personality before they violently die hit a lot different than taking a call after violence had occurred. Gotta love cities where a literal felony is in progress and the police still take over 20 minutes to show up. I had a drunk driver hit my vehicle and continue driving, managing to get all the way home without ducking killing anyone thankfully. And when the police showed up to meet me 45 minutes later, they dazed that she can't be arrested because they don't know if she started drinking when she got home. Despite my daycam footage of her swerving all over the road and stumbling out of her car when she got home, she was eventually held responsible in civil court, and I was reimbursed for damages and a medical exam. I won't put my city because the issue was heard by the chief and the officer was let go, but in my North Texas city, someone spent 2 hours trying to kick in my neighbor's door. He has a door bar, so she was unsuccessful. She was high and at the wrong apartment. The cops never showed up. I called the deputy chief to question this. She did an investigation and said you deserve to hear this from the chief himself. Chief calls me and my neighbor and says the officer only drove by because he figured she was either gone or got what she wanted. I realized nobody can protect you better than yourself. A life that it won. My friend got a call from a very cross sounding old lady that was absolutely furious because her neighbors had stolen her plants. When my friend asked her how she knew it was them, the woman said, because there's holes in my yard and she planted them in her ducking garden. I'm going to go take them back. I have a shovel and you probably won't get here in time to do anything about it. Thank goodness it was a slow day because my friend had to stay on the line for at least 15 minutes to convince her to wait for a cop to come by and talk to her neighbors for her. Volunteer firefighter in Europe. Some summers ago we were called as first responders to a motorcycle accident. When we arrived the cyclist was obviously badly hurt after crashing in a car, but he was orientated and seemed okay. Ambulance and helicopter were on their way already, so we just had to stabilize him. Not a minute later he started deteriorating. Another minute later we started CPR. One of the arriving bystanders was a trauma surgeon and started helping immediately. Shortly after the doctor on the helicopter arrived, it was obvious that there was massive internal bleeding. They first tried to relieve pressure by puncturing and then pretty soon decided that the only chance was to open him up. So they managed a clamshell thoracotomy in the middle of the street, and one started to give the heart direct compressions. The bleeding was massive, and they discovered that there was aortic rupture. The blood loss was too extreme, and he died there. Still to this day I have to drive slowly when I pass by that stretch of road. Harley motorcycle tipped over, and the clutch lever went into a 4-year-old's eye. Parent was on the line asking what to do. Suddenly, she said, "They're going off the motorcycle." I emphatically told her to tell them to stop and wait for SQ&Ms. Rescue ended up cutting off the clutch lever and transporting the kid to hospital. She underwent surgery. That was 1982. Just last year, I met the lead rescue officer and the girl herself, now fully grown. They wanted to meet the 911 operator that saved her vision. Was an EMT before I became a nurse. Call came in for an MVC, motor vehicle collision, with 2 trapped. On arrival, cops said 2 young women, early 20s, drinking and going too fast, and flipped their car. Driver rejected. Then, we hear passenger screaming, "She's pregnant. Be careful. She's pregnant." Jaws hit the floor as the smell of alcohol on both them, and their car was overwhelming. We wanted to airlift the driver, but medic on scene said no. She had fractured literally almost every bone in her body. Open. Compound fracture of tibia/fibula, 2 bones lower leg and fractured femurs. Normal protocol didn't work, because we can't pull traction on femur for the open fracture, and can't mast pants, because she has massive pelvic trauma/fractures with obvious internal bleeding signs and symptoms. Picking up her leg was like picking up jello. Had no substance to it, was shattered beyond belief. We transported both of them together and not sure how we kept driver alive. She obviously lost the baby. Miscarriage started in back of ambulance. Rushed her in for emergency surgery. If I remember, she broke both legs, pelvis, arms, clavicles, ribs, facial breaks, skull fractures, brain bleeds, spleen ruptured, bowel damaged, lost uterus and ovaries, and I don't even remember what else. First bad accident seen as an EMT. Will never forget that feeling of holding a leg with no bone left to hold it together. 18-year-old took methadone and attacked his mother with a knife. She locked herself in the bathroom and called 999. UK here. We turn up and the son is butt-ass naked climbing out the window in the front door, which head smashed. He gets taken to the ground and cuffed. Me and another manage to crawl through the window without cutting ourselves and find mother inside. Place is covered in blood smeared up the walls, and every knife from the kitchen bloodied and discarded round the house. The adrenaline is just starting wear off as the paramedics arrive for mum, and as they're treating her, we go to the kitchen and find a dismembered member sat on the worktop. Turns out the kid had cut his own penis off after his mum locked herself in the bathroom. If you Google meow meow, slang name for methadone, one of the first results is an article about this call in Rolling Stone magazine. Although they say he was hanging out the bedroom window and he wasn't. But yeah, I will never forget holding a penis that was not attached to somebody. Not having to utter the words, "Whose penis is this? Does he have a penis?" and wait. Don't forget his penis. The ambulance almost left with him while we still had it in the house. Former deputy. One morning I was the early person in to take calls as the night shift was headed out, and to cover what trickled in as shift change took place. It's cold and rainy and miserable all around. I'm on my way to someone's house to talk to them about a phone scam when a call comes out to another unit who just marked on duty. He lives across the county from where this call came out. A mother has called in stating her little girl got out of the house while she was getting her ready for a bath. Her daughter is nonverbal and naked and mom can't find her. Everyone that owned a radio in the county started to mark en route. Last night's shift. Court bailiffs. The damn major, everyone was coming. I actually had to wait to get onto the radio to let dispatch know I was now in the area. Turning onto the road. The way this road was situated was a hairpin turn off a highway that led to a dead end at a lake with a stretch in the middle of it going up towards the houses. As I make this right turn and I'm about to head up towards the residence, something catches my eye. This lit girl is standing at the edge of this lake, just staring at it. I bolt from my car, snatch her up in my coat, and start hoofing it back towards the houses. Some stranger just grabbed her and she's crying and trying to wiggle free. Mom sees me about halfway and nearly tackles me as she comes in for the biggest hug probably any of us has ever experienced. The baby was cold, but safe and unharmed. We made sure to get mom in contact with a resource that would get her little girl a tracking bracelet, and she rejoiced to learn that such a thing existed. A couple days later, the mom delivered flowers and a card to me at the office. I still have it, years later, and it still makes me smile. Sure, there's some stories of horrible things, but there's also good calls you can't forget. Although I have real mixed feelings about my time in law enforcement. I know that day I did good. Someone called stating they had seen a man on a small island on the lake hours ago, but now the man was gone and his boat is still out there. An older woman called in a half hour later stating her husband had gone missing. He was last seen taking his boat out on the lake sometime overnight. The increasing tension in her voice as she noticed sheriff's deputies were already dredging the lake was something else. She was calm, but clearly actively dealing with the fact her husband was likely dead. They found his body not long after I hung up with her. Sometimes it's the people screaming that get to you. Sometimes it's the quiet acceptance of a horrible truth that stays with you longer. Memorial Day, 1989. FF/EMT at the time. Call dispatched as a car into a telephone pole. When we got there, I couldn't believe the carnage. A RHS student had been given a muscle car as a birthday present. The police later estimated he was going over 90 miles per hour when he hit the pole head on. Patient's right femur was about 6 inches long. His patella almost touching his pelvis. The entire long bone had compressed like an accordion. He had other multiple injuries. Took us 2 hours to cut him out of the car. The medics were pumping him so full of drugs to maintain his blood pressure they started to openly worry that they might duck his kidneys up. We finally got him out of the car, only time I've ever seen a kid used, on a gurney, and took off for the hospital. Medic had 2 large bore forths going and had a BP cuff wrapped around one of the bags to create his own rapid infuser. Apostrophe. The kid lived. He ended up losing the foot on the leg that was destroyed. And that leg, from what I heard months later, was more metal than flesh. The irony was that the kid was a New York State indoor track and field state champion runner. I remember odd things people say under stress. A girl's arm was ripped to shreds in a dog mauling. She kept using the word meat. There's shredded meat everywhere. And she continued to say it as she found pieces of her arm on the ground. Is that a piece of my meat? Exclamation mark. And hoo hoo hoo. OMG, it's my meat. Exclamation mark. Some others. I brought you the asparagus. The asparagus. Exclamation mark. Guy who came back from the market to find his partner dead. Mon buddy. Don't do this. It's Valentine's Day. Homeless passerby who started CPR on a distraught woman's husband who collapsed at a gas pump. Little 4-year-old girl got ran over by her grandmother with a lawnmower that was on. It was not the gore or the blood that got me. It was the utter panic of the family and the way they broke down when the helicopter took off with her inside. This isn't mine, but a friend of mine fielded this call. An elderly gentleman called 911 to notify them that his wife had passed in her sleep. Only it was like 7 o'clock at night. Apparently he just couldn't deal with it emotionally, so he got her dressed, took her out to the car, and drove around doing his errands for the day. Watched some TV together, and then after 12 or so hours he finally sort of accepted that she was gone and called 911. My friend is a first responder. He once got a call about a man that had fallen in the shower. He gets there, and the guy is over 400 pounds and out cold on the bathroom floor. My friend, his partner and the guy's roommate try everything they can think of to get the guy on the stretcher. But the bathroom is tiny, and they can't even roll him over. Eventually they call 2 more ambulances and finally get the guy out of the bathroom. They get to the elevator and it's too small to fit the guy on the stretcher. So 6 paramedics have to carry the guy down 5 flights of stairs. My friend called in sick for the rest of the week cause he was so sore and stiff. He couldn't move. A mother called because her kid pulled a pot of oil off the stove and it spilled on his face. She said she could see the skin peeling off his face. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you enjoyed watching this video, leave your thoughts in the comments below.